Roseburg remembers the victims of the college massacre.
We have been trying to figure out how to tell everyone how amazing Lucas was, but that would take 18 years.
Also tonight, how do we stop the killing? We'll listen to voices against violence.
The president ought to take full charge and do whatever is necessary to protect the lives of United States citizens.
The search for 28 Americans lost at sea in Hurricane Joaquin, and the latest on where that storm is headed. And Steve Hartman takes us for a ride on the gravy train.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley.
This is our Western edition. Late today, we learned their names and saw their faces. The 9 gunned down yesterday at Umpqua Community College in Oregon. Some were fresh out of high school, new to college. Others were returning to education to make a new start in life. President Obama this evening has ordered flags across the nation at half-staff. 9 others were wounded, including Chris Mintz, a hero amid the horror. He was shot several times as he tried to stop the gunman. John Blackstone in Roseburg, Oregon, begins our coverage.
The smiling faces of the victims are now known, ranging in age from 18 to 67. They include 3 18-year-olds, recent high school graduates, Rebecca Carnes, Lucas Eibel, and Quinn Cooper. Kari Boyd spoke for Cooper's family.
Quinn was funny, sweet, compassionate, and such a wonderful, loving person. He always stood up for people.
19-year-old Lucero Alcaraz hoped to be a pediatric nurse, and 20-year-old Trevin Onspach was the son of a firefighter. Douglas County Fire Chief Greg Marler delivered a message from Trevin's family.
Trevin was larger than life and brought out the best in those around him. In Justin and Kim's words, Trevin was a perfect son.
There was also 34-year-old Jason Johnson, whose family said he'd finally found his path. 44-year-old Serena Dawn Moore, 59-year-old Kim Dietz, and the English professor, 67-year-old Lawrence Levine. Another student in that classroom was Chris Mintz, who's now being called a hero. The 30-year-old Army veteran ran toward the gunman in an effort to stop him. He was shot 7 times but survived. 18-year-old Anna Boylan had a bullet hit near her spine. As she lay wounded, she called her brother, Corey Boylan, telling him the gunman asked victims about their religion.
He would stand them up, and if they said they were Christian, he said something along the lines of, "You'll be with God soon."
Anna survived by pretending to be dead.
What it would take to lay on the ground with a gunshot, thinking that you are going to die, not if you're going to die, you are going to die. The strength it takes to be so still in a situation of such worry and treachery is just brave. It's bravery.
Late this afternoon, we learned that the gunman, 26-year-old Chris Harper Mercer, was a student enrolled in the writing class where the mass shooting took place. The decision has now been made that this community college will remain closed all of next week.
John Blackstone for us tonight. John, thank you. The 26-year-old gunman died in a shootout with police. He had several extra magazines of ammunition. He lived near Roseburg in an apartment with his mother. 7 guns were found in that apartment, and 6 more guns were found at the crime scene at the college. It appears he has been a troubled man for a very long time. Here's Justice Correspondent Jeff Pegues.
Investigators say Chris Harper Mercer's arsenal of more than a dozen weapons included a Smith & Wesson, Taurus .40 caliber pistol, Glock 19, and a rifle. All were purchased legally. He also had the type of steel-plated body armor worn by police. Investigators have discovered what they are calling a manifesto. Typed on a computer and printed, sources say the multi-page rant was philosophical, at times racist, and authored by someone who was mad at the world. The writer lamented not having a girlfriend and talked about going out in a blaze of glory. Mercer, who family says was born in the United Kingdom, moved to the U.S. as a young boy. He lived in Torrance, California with his mother before moving to an apartment less than 10 minutes away from the community college. A neighbor says his mother told others he was depressed.
The mother mentioned how he just stays on his computer behind his closed door in his room all the time.
In 2008, Mercer enlisted in the Army, but he was discharged after a month for failing to meet Army standards. Some of his social media accounts glorify the Irish Republican Army and criticize organized religion. In August, he commented on the killer of 2 Roanoke, Virginia journalists. Seems the more people you kill, the more you're in the limelight.
Guns is certainly an issue. Mental health is an issue.
Mary Ellen O'Toole is a former FBI profiler.
They do paint a picture of someone that has equal opportunity hatred.
What does that mean?
That means he hates everybody. It's not just women, it's not just Christians. These kinds of individuals have a hatred for the world.
Law enforcement sources say a receipt was found at the shooting scene indicating that Mercer had recently made a purchase at a campus store. Scott, his status at the school remains unclear, but he may have been taking a course.
Jeff, is there any reason to believe that Mercer had been in trouble with the law before?
Well, right now, all of the research that we are doing and what we are seeing is that he does not have a criminal past with law enforcement. But as you know, today they announced that all of the guns that they found not only at the scene but at his home were purchased legally.
And why did he wash out of the Army in just a month? Did the Army say anything more about that?
Well, they did not give too many details about that. That is also still unclear, but he lasted only a short time, as you know.
Jeff Begay is reporting for us in the Washington newsroom tonight. Jeff, thanks very much. In another important story tonight, 28 Americans are missing, along with 5 Polish sailors, all of them aboard a cargo ship that has been caught in Hurricane Joaquin. David Begnaud is following this.
Tonight, the United States Coast Guard is flying into the eye of the hurricane, trying to locate the El Faro cargo ship. Yesterday, a satellite distress alert was sent at approximately 7 a.m. Eastern Time, indicating that the ship was taking on water and was without power. Since then, silence.
That last known position was right next to the eye of Hurricane Joaquin.
Captain Mark Fedor is with the U.S. Coast Guard.
That puts them in a very vulnerable position, and that's why we're trying to get an asset out there as soon as we can to at least confirm their status.
The Coast Guard sent 2 aircraft and a cutter, but they're battling 140-mile-an-hour winds and 30-foot waves.
The vessel is without propulsion. That means that they have no way to operate their engine, so they're just sitting in the water, and they're susceptible to the full fury of that hurricane.
Ready for 1. Last night, the Coast Guard succeeded in rescuing 12 crew members on another cargo ship. This one stranded in waters near Haiti. And we have just learned from the United States Coast Guard that they have suspended their search for the missing cargo ship. They usually search at night, but due to the hurricane, they say it is just not safe enough. Scott, the search will resume tomorrow morning at dawn with 3 C-130 aircraft in the air.
Coast Guard goes out when other ships are sinking. David Begnaud, thanks very much. Today, U.S. astronaut Scott Kelly sent this picture of Joaquin from the space station. The hurricane has been thrashing the Bahamas for 2 days. It's expected to track north over the weekend and turn away from the U.S. coast. The East Coast is already flooding from a separate nor'easter, and Chris Van Cleve has that.
The problem is too much water, punishing waves in New Jersey, coastal flooding in Ocean City, Maryland, and streets underwater in Charleston, South Carolina. Outside New York City, crews are working to keep the water from this slow-moving nor'easter away. In Virginia Beach, nearly 9 inches of rain since Wednesday has the ground saturated. Drew Langford from the city's Public Works.
You can't assume because it hasn't flooded before, it's not going to flood now. That's the wrong assumption to make in this kind of storm.
This storm actually has city crews more concerned than the hurricane because it has parked itself on top of Virginia Beach. It's bringing a lot of rain and strong winds. The strong winds whip up the tide, so there are extra high tides. The real concern here, flooding.
We are concerned, yes.
Josie Hyannis is standing in what should be the parking lot of a restaurant. Bubba's has to be dry and ready for business in just hours.
We have some parties tonight, rehearsal dinner, and we cannot cancel anything like that. We have to honor that.
North and South Carolina are expected to get hammered with rain this weekend. Already several counties there are under flood warnings. Scott, here emergency crews have not ruled out the possibility of some evacuations in low-lying areas because of flooding concerns. They say those concerns could stretch into next week.
Chris Van Cleve, thanks. So, where is the hurricane headed now? Lonnie Quinn is the chief weathercaster of our New York City station, WCBS. Lonnie?
Good enough, Scott. I will give you the latest from the National Hurricane Center, and here it is. It's weakened a little bit, still a Category 3. It's a major hurricane. Winds are at 125 miles per hour. The official track from the National Hurricane Center still keeps it offshore. No one on the eastern seaboard even in the cone of concern, but we've got to talk about the water associated with this storm. I know we've got the two different systems, one around the southeast, and we've got Joaquin, but take a look. You can see the tail of that rain coming from the Carolinas right down to Joaquin. So even if Joaquin continues to push further east like we think it will, it still supplies a lot of rain to our area.
Lonnie Quinn, WCBS, thanks. 11 Americans are dead in Afghanistan after the crash of a U.S. Air Force transport plane. The C-130 was on takeoff. It appears to be an accident, not enemy fire. 2,370 Americans have been killed in the 14-year-old war in Afghanistan. President Obama said today Russia's entry into the Syrian war is a recipe for disaster. Mr. Obama called out Vladimir Putin for bombing rebels that the U.S. supports in order to rescue the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. At a White House news conference, the president also said he'd be willing to negotiate with Russia and Iran about Syria as long as it involved Assad's exit. Holly Williams reports that today Russian pilots added the ISIS terrorist group to their targets.
Russia said its airstrikes destroyed an ISIS command center and a training camp near the group's stronghold of Raqqa. But Russian airstrikes have also targeted so-called moderate rebels, some of them backed by the US. This video seems to show the aftermath of a Russian airstrike just outside the Syrian capital of Damascus. Syria's civil war has already cost more than 250,000 lives, many of them taken by the Syrian regime's bombing of civilian areas. Russia supports the regime with weapons and money, but now it's also giving Syrian government forces an even more critical advantage. Russian aviation is helping us a lot, said Bassam Ahmed Mayrub, a tank commander in the Syrian army. But for those Syrians who oppose the regime, Russian airstrikes will only strengthen government forces and worsen their agony. In the suburbs of Damascus today, emergency workers rescued children from the aftermath of a bombing, though it's not known whether it was the work of Russian or regime forces. And then another blast and another blow to any hope of peace in Syria.
The US and its coalition partners in Europe and the Middle East accused Russia today of causing civilian casualties in Syria. And Scott, they called on Russia to stop attacking the Syrian opposition and instead to target ISIS.
Holly Williams reporting tonight. Holly, thank you. An explosion has rocked a luxury high-rise near Miami, and what Americans are saying about how to stop gun violence when the CBS Evening News continues. The college shooting in Oregon has restarted the national conversation about violence, and we have asked several people to give us their views. It's part of a new series that we're starting here tonight called Voices Against Violence.
I'm Calvin Butts, pastor of the Abyssinian Baptist Church in the city of New York. Gun violence in America is an epidemic that is exploding all over our nation, in our churches, on our college campuses, in our movie theaters. This is a threat to our national security. There must be severe legislation that addresses the manufacturing and the sale and the interstate trafficking of guns. We can no longer sit by and watch mothers and fathers and husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, friends and neighbors crying at the loss of life. Right now, we've got to draw attention to this problem by doing something that may seem a little strict, but it has to be done, or else these killings will, as we have seen, continue.
I'm Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark. Anytime we have a horrific incident like a mass shooting, these things have a tendency to become politicized. One of the things that I would do to reduce, we're not going to be able to eliminate these entirely, but to reduce the likelihood that there's mass carnage, is to get rid of these gun-free zones. These gun-free zones, theaters, churches, college campuses, elementary schools, are chosen by the perpetrator for a reason. He knows that nobody is going to be able to interrupt him until mass carnage occurs. And we ought to give people the individual freedom, the individual right to, under certain circumstances, like a concealed carry license, to go armed in these venues in case something like this happens for their own protection and to have a chance. Look at Chicago, Illinois. Look at Washington, D.C., the federal district. If gun control really worked, those would be two of the safest areas in the United States. In fact, they're two of the most violent.
I'm Dr. Kelly Posner, the founder of a suicide center at Columbia University. 90% of school shooters have well-documented suicidal issues. 30% of shooters actually say that suicide is their motive. So if we screen, meaning ask a few questions, we may be able to find people and get the help they need before things like this happen. The questions about suicidal thoughts are quite simple. You start with, have you wished you were dead or wished you could go to sleep and not wake up? Or have you actually had thoughts of killing yourself? If that's no, you move on. However, if that's yes, then it's tiered. So we can, in a very feasible way, figure out who's really at risk and who really needs help. Imagine that an employee of a gun store, or when somebody goes to get a gun license, all of these places, they could be trained to ask these questions. And maybe somebody who's suffering in silence will be identified before it's too late.
President Obama talked about the shooting today. He said, let's not forget this is happening every single day in forgotten neighborhoods. Police in Cleveland say that just yesterday, a 5-month-old girl was killed in a drive-by shooting. It's the third time in a month that a child has been killed in a drive-by in that city. And in Chicago, at least 5 people have been wounded since yesterday. The victims include a 15-year-old boy shot while standing on a porch. And we'll be right back. The Labor Department said today that the U.S. economy added 142,000 jobs last month. That's considered weak and far fewer than expected. The unemployment rate held steady at 5.1%. Wall Street took the hiring slowdown as a sign that the Fed will hold off increasing interest rates, and so the Dow was up 200 points. There was a gas explosion today atop a high-rise in Miami. The explosion was in the penthouse boiler room on the 33rd floor. 6 people were hurt, including 2 firemen. Debris from the explosion landed on the beach. The cause still under investigation. Steve Hartman on the road, coming next.